All right, welcome back. This is the last presentation of Chapter 8, Political Parties and Interest Groups. I had to do a short kind of standalone because I was figuring that a full, if I just did 4 presentations, that last presentation was going to be like 20 minutes, would have taken forever to record, so, and mainly to upload. So here we go, last presentation, interest groups. Interest groups have a number of approaches to influence Congress. Historically, lobbying refers to petitioners contacting members of Congress in lobbies of the 2 congressional chambers. Lobbying is protected by the First Amendment. It's all about the petition clause. The Federal Regulation of Lobbying Act of 1946 defines who constitutes a lobbyist and requires all organizations employing lobbyists to register with Congress and to disclose whom they represent and what they're looking for and how much they're paid. This is especially true of people that are lobbying on behalf of foreign governments. So lobbyists are defined as any person who shall engage himself for pay or any consideration for the purpose of attempting to influence the passage or defeat of any legislation of the Congress of the United States. There are approximately 11,000 lobbyists that are currently registered with Congress. The most important basis for lobbyist influence is information, and Congress is increasingly dependent on lobbyists for that information. So in recent years, Congress has cut funding for its own research and support staff. This is something that happened at the state level too, where they basically emasculated their own ability to research and to learn what they need to legislate on. So between 1975 and 2015, the combined staffs for the Congressional Research Service, the Government Accountability Office, and the Congressional Budget Office fell by 45%. Congress has also cut the total number of staffers directly working for representatives and senators working in the Capitol, directing more staff to their home districts and offices. If you understand that that staff equals capacity to act, research, draft legislation, conduct oversight, etc., you may ask yourself why Congress has chosen to reduce its own capacity. And again, that reflects, I think, an ideological preference among some quarters that basically think we should be doing less governing overall. Lobbying the president, again, only the most skilled and best connected lobbyists can actually, have any realistic hope of getting access to and influencing presidential decisions. Most presidential administrations include key advisors and fundraisers with ties to K Street. And K Street actually refers to a street on which most interest groups lobby. Well, most lobbyists have their headquarters. Lobbyists made significant attempts to gain access to, the Trump administration during the former president's tenure. More than 200 advocacy groups, companies, and foreign governments sought contact by booking events at Mar-a-Lago, which is Trump's home headquarters, and his various golf courses and hotels. Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C. became a frequent meeting place between the administration officials and lobbyists seeking access and influence. Again, he subsequently had to sell the Washington hotel. And again, it reflects just, the extent to which a guy who was in the business world thought that what was going on there was perfectly apropos. This is how he thought business ought to be done in terms of politics. Lobbying the executive branch, again, even when, successful in gaining, favorable congressional action or presidential action, interest groups have to go to the executive branch agencies that are responsible for actually implementing the policy. We'll learn more about that next week. The power of the executive branch, agencies to, use administrative discretion through both the rulemaking and the adjudication processes mean that they can be consequential in terms of how policy is put into place. And interest groups have to, be aware of the influence that bureaucratic agencies can exert. So how interest groups make policies, there are these two important concepts, iron triangles and issue networks. The next slide will provide you with an example or an illustration of how an iron triangle works. Iron triangles refer to stable cooperative relationships that often develop among congressional committees, an executive branch agency, and one or more supportive interest groups. Those kinds of relationships tend to emerge in issue areas like agriculture, defense, energy, and veterans affairs. The iron in an iron triangle is this idea of expertise, which, expertise can oftentimes serve to exclude non-experts from the deliberative process in programs like, for example, the development of weapons systems or creating subsidies for agricultural products and the like. So that's an example. That's a kind of an illustration of an iron triangle. What is it that Congress? They have certain committees and subcommittees where again they have a unique hold over the policy-making process. Executive agencies like the Department of Defense, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, the Department of Energy, and the Department of Agriculture, which is huge, and people don't really realize how big the USDA is. And then, of course, you've got, here in this instance, it's the defense sector. You've got Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Grumman, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, General Dynamics. These are all major defense contractors. And again, each side of the triangle has something that the other group wants, right? And they're able to kind of feed one another. And again, the problem is they're feeding at the public trough. These are taxpayer dollars, and they should be spent transparently, right? Now, a word on issue networks. Issue networks are, again, the problem with an issue network, with most people look at education as a good example of an issue network. People think that they know what they're talking about when they talk about education. Therefore, there is no sense in which experts can somehow lock people out, and people can move in and out of an issue network. Hillary Clinton can write a book on education, and suddenly she's got a voice over education policy, and so that suggests that with an issue network, it's more open to people coming into the system. So to conclude, what do we think? Again, the idealized view of American politics assumes that policies are created by legislators representing the public interests. But in truth, policies are generally the byproduct of the influence of political parties and interest groups. So James Madison wrote that liberty is to faction as air is to fire. What did he mean by that? To some extent, again, he meant that interest groups are an inevitable feature of any democratic system, and that they need to be directed. Fire in a fire pit, is useful. It's warm, provides warmth. Fire raging through a forest is not so useful, or even a forest fire can have its uses, but we want to direct it. We want to control it. Is party polarization more likely to remain high in the near future, or is it likely to burn out at some point? That's a good question. What do you think of competition among different interests? Is it free, open, and vigorous, or are some types of interests more equal than others? I think, I clearly think that some interests are far more powerful than others. So that's it for this chapter. When we come back, we will jump into sort of the practical aspect of democratic politics, which is people have to win elections in order to hold office. And there are a variety of important issues related to that. So I will see you next time, and we will jump into that topic.